What's good, YouTube? This is J.PhammingtonYGO here, coming at you live with a YCS LA deck profile. What is your name and what do you do?
I'm Jude Paris and I placed 13 in Swiss and top 64 at the YCS.
Nice. Let's take a look at the profile today.
Alright, so I played pure punk with a little bit of extra stuff in there. So starting off, we have our 3 Foxy, 3 Ogre Dance, and 3 Ze Amin. These are your 9 starters for a deck. There's a 12th one in E-Tele, but like these are the cards that'll get you to the rest of your engine. Then in our additional punk monsters, we play 2 copies of Deer Note and one of each of the little names. Spider, Wa Gon, Sharakusai. Wa Gon and Spider search, spell, and trap respectively. This one lets you fusion and synchro during the opponent's turn. Deer Note is your level 5 that when it's sent from field to graveyard lets you res a punk monster. It's also like an extender because you can reveal it in hand and another punk monster. One gets summoned, the other gets sent to graveyard, so they all work together to climb into your Psychic and Punisher or your other level 8 synchros that you need. Then we have our 3 E-Tele. E-Tele accesses pretty much everything in the deck. You can find any of your one-of pieces, or more importantly, you can find your Ze Amin. So this is copies 10, 11, 12 of your starters. It can also access Gamma, which is really nice if you're trying to make Baron lines. And then our last 3 punk cards, we have 2 of the field spell and 1 Gabu. Gabu's an imperm, but it also gains life if you control punk monsters, so like you can be cheeky with this and win in time. That never happened. I don't think it's ever come up. It's come up once in my entire time playing this deck, but not today. Then we have the broken field spell. I don't think this deck would be a deck without this field spell. It says up to twice per turn, if you were to pay life points to activate a psychic monster's effect, you can draw a card. And then as a soft once per turn, banish a punk card from your graveyard to special summon a punk monster from your hand. So not only does it draw you cards, but it's also an extender. It's kind of a brick though, because like if you open it up and you don't open up any punk names, then it just really doesn't do anything, which is why I only play 2 copies. A lot of builds I'll see play like 1. So like Punk Therion will play like 1. People who splash a punk engine will play like 1 to 0 copies. I like 3, but I know that 3 just isn't correct, and my list is already at 42 cards, so I had to make some concessions, and this was one of the cards I had to cut.
Nice.
That's our punk engine. Moving on to our utility cards and hand traps. We have 3 copies of Kashtira Fenrir. This card was insane for me all weekend. At the last time I played this deck, I topped in Louisiana. I got second, and I was siding my 2 Fenrirs because I just wasn't really liking it. This was at the start of the format when your Kashtira players were going for the 5-lock combo more than they were going for a Rise Hard Pass. So Fenrir kind of felt bad because like you would try and summon it, but it wouldn't really do anything going into their board. But now the boards are like a lot more simple. People are ending on trying to play real Yu-Gi-Oh! Where there's like a back and forth and a dialogue between the 2 players. So Fenrir is a lot better now because of that. In addition to that, Fenrir also lets you access your level 10 synchros a lot easier because it's a level 7, all your little punk names are level 3s. So it lets you make the Baron early on and then just combo underneath your Baron, which is really nice. And we have another board breaker in the form of Evenly Matched. Was maining this, not a going second deck, but you have to main this. The format just has way too many good cards and good boards that get made, and evenly just helps you break them a lot easier, because I don't mind giving up my battle phase because I know that if I break the board and I'm able to establish like a Punisher, a triple bounce, or a Baron with hand traps, I know that I'm winning that duel.
Basically just breaking the board and then denying them any recovery.
Yes. Then the last 3 cards are 2 talents and 1 called by. Called by was okay. Sided out a lot against cash. Everything else I keep it in. It's kind of nice with it. Today I drew it a lot. I drew it a lot more than I deserved to. Talents was okay. It's talents. What's really nice in the cash matchup is like the talents is always live because of Arise Heart's mandatory effect. But all the other matchups, it's kind of tricky because a lot of people can't play around it, but cash can't. Cash just cannot play around it. Last but not least, we have our hand traps. I played a lot of hand traps, so 3 driver, 3 gamma, 1 driver, 3 imperm, 3 ash, 2 droll, and 1 ogre. The ogre is actually searchable through your regular combo lines because your level 8 synchro can search a level 3 psychic monster, so you play the 1. Not only that, but in a pinch you can access this with E-Tele if you really need to. I've never done that, but you know, it's there. 2 Droll, probably should have played the 3rd. This hits like every rogue deck, but more importantly, it hits Cash, which is like the matchup that I probably struggle the most against. But like it's a winnable matchup, but it is the hardest matchup for me. Ash and Imperm are just mandatory. These are just good generic hand traps across the board. And Gamma is the next best hand trap, I guess, after that. So there are 3 hand traps to me that I would define as like the big hand traps, like the most impactful. And those are Droll, Nib, and Gamma. These are the hand traps that usually you see them come down and they can end a turn. People play around Nib real easily right now this format. Droll is good, but like a lot of people are like, oh, you should main it or you shouldn't, so there's like a lot of debate. I ended up maining it, but not a 2. But I think Gamma is probably my favorite because it has synergy with my deck because of the teleport, so it can let me like climb or in a pinch if I need to. But not only that, if I do resolve a Gamma on my turn, it lets me make a level 8 synchro, and my main boss monster is my main searcher utility monster for my extra deck is level 8. So if there's ever a point where I'm resolving this on my turn, it puts me just that one step ahead further. So this card is just too good in Punk decks, and there's also a huge choke point where if they ash you, you lose, and you just happen to have no monsters on board. So the Gamma insulates that play even further.
How many times have they tried to ashing the E-Telly and then you had Gamma?
Today, well, not today, but yesterday in the Swiss rounds, it only happened once. I feel like a lot of the players here this time around were like really smart about it and kind of didn't commit hand traps until later on. I feel like the first 3 to 4 rounds, most people did not know. Well, I had a 2-round buy, so round 3, 4, 5, most players I played against, I feel like didn't know what my deck did and kind of were asking me to read everything. But after round 6, a lot of players stop picking up the cards. You're like, that's the one that searches, right? Searches X, right? That's the one that searches this, right? Okay, you're grabbing that. That's the special summoner. They knew my deck. So they were kind of heads up and played around like my Gamma, played around the Droll. They played around a lot. They knew that like, oh, it's a Punk deck, so he's probably gonna run a ton of hand traps. So they were very smart about it. It didn't come up that much. At locals all the time, but here, not so much. All right, moving on to the extra deck. These are our 2-ofs. We played 2 copies of Jam Dragon Drive, 2 copies of Amazing Dragon, and 2 copies of Psychic End Punisher. Jam Dragon Drive is probably the synchro that you're going to go into the most. It's a level 8. It requires a Psychic Tuner and any non-tuner monsters. Its effect is on summon, you pay 600 life point. When a synchro summon or a special summon by a Punk Sharakusai, pay 600, dump or search. You're never dumping a level 3 Psychic. And then in the graveyard, if your opponent spawns to a Punk card or effect or activation, you can summon itself out. So this is the heavy lifter for you. This is the main thing you're climbing into. It searches your follow-up in Ze Amin, searches Ogre Dance, searches the Trap Searcher, searches everything. There is a line, Ze Amin in any card, most Punk players know it, that let you draw 2, search everything, and you end on 5k life points, setting you up for a really nice Punisher. And without this card, you wouldn't be able to do that line. If you're playing Punk Therion, then you're probably playing the Bug, which is like the same thing pretty much, but you know, this nets you more, which is why I didn't play the Therion build. Oh, this is your bounce. This is what you're mainly going to on your opponent's turn. So you're gonna set this up with Sharakusai, which is the quick synchro, and it'll give you like a triple bounce, and then if it stays up and comes back around to your turn, it's a monster reborn. So that's really nice. Sometimes you can get aggressive with it and bounce during your own turn to push for game. And the strongest monster in the extra deck, and by strongest I mean biggest attack. So this Psychic End Punisher, it's a tower, so sometimes we'll make this in a simplified game, say towers with hand traps and a win. Did not do that a lot today. I think I only did it like once or twice. Most of the time when I summoned this card, I was just kind of pushing for lethal instead of sitting on it like I used to do. So yeah, Punisher put in work, but not as much work as this next card, which was Baron. We played 2 10s. We played Baron and Chengying. Chengying didn't come up much this tournament. Still a good card, still running in the future, but just didn't come up that much. But Baron, however, did some really heavy lifting, and I think the reason for that is because I played 3 Fenrir in the main versus like siding them or only playing the 2 like I normally do. There was another build of Punk that I was testing with Punk Kashtira that made Baron turn 1 more consistently because you had more 7s, but I didn't have enough time to like fully flush out that deck and test it, so that's why I ended up on this. But the one thing that I know is that this format, not a lot of decks are making Omni Negates, so if you're able to stick a Baron and back it with like your other like utility responses, removal, hand traps and stuff like that, and you're gonna get far. So Baron was really nice for that. In our last synchro, Draco Berserker, never made it, didn't come up this weekend. You can replace it with Omega, but I just think this is the best other level 8 that you can run. If you really want, you could also cut this for the Stardust Excel that came out, because this is kind of a pipe dream thing. It looked good on paper, but I didn't test it that much. Is if you resolve a Gamma, you make the Stardust, and the Stardust summons back the driver, the Gamma, and you're able to synchro 10 for Baron. But again, it didn't come up that much, but that's like another card you could run. There's a lot of flex spots in this deck and the extra deck, as you can see. The three link monsters are Knightmare Unicorn, Psy-frame Lambda, and Aussa the Earth Charmer. Did not make Unicorn today. Made Lambda once. Made it once. Didn't have a Gamma in hand. Just wanted to threaten, so it was nice. And the Aussa I only made like twice today. I made it once, and both times I made this was against Cash, because you can take their Fenrir, you can take their Scareclaw Kashtira, and then you can synchro with it and make your own Baron, and then like you can crash your Aussa to search for Ze Amin, so that way you have follow up. So these were okay, but you know, the biggest issue I found with the extra deck is that if I get deburied, I don't know what to do. But I got deburied a lot. Well, not a lot. I got deburied twice today, and I was still confident because I just sat with Fenrir and hand traps, which is sometimes just enough to win. Our two XZ monsters we played are Hope Harbinger and Dingirsu. This would always stay. This can become a Felgren. It can become number 90. It doesn't really matter what this is. This is definitely a flex spot. Ding stays in because I have no out to IP Abramax, so if Sprite is still doing that, I don't know if Sprite is still doing that. This is like my only out, so those are in there. And then the last card is the Fusion, One Rising Carp. You only need the one. I don't feel a need to play a second. Yes, Kashtira can rip it from your extra deck. Are they going to? Probably not. They're probably going to go for something a lot more threatening, but you know, it's play the one, you don't need one. Then our side deck, a little wonky. My side deck patterns were really weird, but it worked out in the end. So our only going first card to site was 3 Solemn Judgment.
Ooh.
So I got this idea from a friend at Locals. They picked up Punk when the Gold Pride stuff came out, and they actually beat me in a mirror match because they resolved a Judgment against me, and the life point deficit became too big for me to out their Psychic and Punisher. So I straight up took that idea from him, because sometimes people will crash until they're lower than you, and then out your Punisher. But this is just insane too, because the problem with this format is there's too many decks. There's way too many decks. You can't side for all of them. You can't main deck all the outs for all of them. So you want to be able to cast the widest net and just like be able to, like, I don't know, like side against the most decks as possible. So
like
Judgment,
every card
yeah,
just goes
yeah.
in for a lot of matchups anyway.
And Judgment is a catch-all. It's good against every matchup, so especially going first. So only time I sided this in like going second was into Labyrinth or back row decks, because that aren't trap tricks, so I guess just Labyrinth and maybe Lich if you see it, because it's a slow roll. You're not going to be able to OTK them, and if you try and push through while they have like set 4, you're probably going to lose. So just take your time waiting until you draw your Judgments, or you can explode. So Judgment is good for that. Yeah. Then we have more going second cards. We have our Thrust Suite, as I like to call it, our 1 Lightning Storm, our 1 Duster, our 1 Change of Heart, and the 1 Thrust. So Thrust basically acts as another copy of all this. In addition, it also acts as more copies of Evenly and more copies of Tactics. On the real, I only sided in these cards like twice. I didn't side in Stormlight. I only sided in like once against like Labyrinth and once against Cash, and then I decided to not side it in when I played against Cash again. Duster was okay. Never came up, but nice to have it in the main deck. Game 2 against like any deck that I think is gonna side back row, but in hindsight, probably shouldn't have sided in those situations because maybe they have anti-spell, but it is what it is. Change of Heart was mid. Never drew it, And when I did have opportunities to thrust, I never thrusted for any of these cards. I was always grabbing the other tactics. So it's just, these cards are okay. They're good. They're good cards, you know. But it just, for my tournament run, and that's the one thing I want to like point out. Like this list, like while I do believe my list is a good list, because the format is so vast, this could have just as easily been a bad list because I just see like a bunch of matchups I wasn't prepared for, and that's the problem with this format. So
then, you could just get cheesed by anything here.
Yeah, you get cheesed by anything. So then our last hand traps, we have 3 Nib, 2 Ghost Belle, and the 3rd Droll. Like I said earlier, should have made this. Ghost Belle is okay. It's there for Brandit, and it's there for Lab. Sighted in against Lab, didn't draw it, but you know, nice to have it still. And there was a lot of Brandit in the room, but I dodged them all, so yeah, it's there. Nib is like one of those cards I was talking about earlier, the 3 turn ending hand traps. I wanted to play all 3, but I only wanted to main deck 2, but not like all copies of 2 of them. I felt like Droll was more impactful than Nib. You can play around Nib, but sometimes you just cannot play around the Droll, especially if your deck just search to get their engine started. But more importantly, like this stops the Kashtira player. This does not have to make Rise Ghost player. So that's the only reason this was inside. Also, there's a Rogue Slayer, so I'm gonna have to run it. Then the last 2 sideboard cards, I needed something else, some more insurance against cash. So it was 2 Gamma Seal. Probably should have sided the 3rd and only sided 2 Nibiru. Did not start siding this in until day 2. Day 1, I did not side this in a single time. Even against my cash opponent that I played day 1, because I just felt like I wouldn't need it, and I didn't because I beat them. But yeah, moving forward, I feel like this card would be really good. Also, even more like proof that this card is good. Someone was playing Luna Kaiju today, and they top 64'd. So you know, Kaiju's are back.
Wow,
so,
that's crazy.
Yeah, so that's the deck.
All right. So, is there any other last-minute changes you would have done? Just any closing remarks?
If I could find a way to trim this deck down to 40, I would. I don't think you have to though, considering that. So my deck building philosophy is a little stupid, and I feel like every 2 Garnets you can go up 1 or 2 cards. Realistically, like if we're looking at like if you're one of those people who plugs in the numbers into the hypergeometric calculator, the percentage chance of you like drawing X hand versus Y hand with 40 and 42 isn't that big, but it does come up. It came up for me twice where I did break. 3rd Gamma Seal. List is fine. Really hate this format, but it was fun to play. So yeah, that's it.
All right. What were your matchups today? Did you have a very high diverse amount of matchups due to the format being extremely diverse?
I did see a lot of different decks. The only decks that I played against twice were Cash and Sword Soul. So I had a 2-round bye because I won the VIP qualifier.
Nice.
Round 3 I played. So round 3 I started. I think I played Sword Soul first. I 2-0'd. Round after that was Kashtira. I 2-1. Round after that, so I have my notes. I'll just pull that out real quick. It's in one of these pockets.
Man, he's got it.
Yeah.
He's got it somewhere.
I got it somewhere. Unless I dropped it. Oh well, I'll just remember. Cash. After Cash was, I think, that was my feature against Earth Machine. Don't know how he got that far. Well, I do. It was the Floodgates. Definitely the Floodgates carried that man. Then I played another Sword Soul. Then I played Labyrinth. And then the last round of Swiss, day 1, I played against Kamal Crooks, who was playing
Tri-Sprite.
Tri-Sprite, which was really cool to see. And then day 2, I played Marine Cess. That was my second loss. Then I played the game after Marine Cess went by. So Drytron. And I opened Droll both games, which was nice.
There you go.
And then the final round of Swiss, I played against Cash, which I beat. And then in top 64, I played against Cash again. So I guess I saw Cash the most at three Cash matchups. won 2 of them, lost 1 of them, the one that mattered. So yeah, it was really diverse today. No branded, thank God.
No branded.
I'm terrified of branded. That deck scares me so much.
All right. Is there any shout-outs you want to mention?
Shout outs to everyone from Houston, everyone from Texas who came out to this event.
Hey, yo.
Shout outs to Cheng Production, everyone at Atomic Gaming who played test with me until like 4 a.m. Y'all are insane. Go home. And yeah, that's shout outs to my dad for supporting me through all this and not just being one of those parents who's just like, yeah, follow your dreams, son. Do whatever you want. You want to play Yu-Gi-Oh for a living, chase it. So, yeah, that's pretty much it.
All right. Thank you for the profile, Jude.
No problem.